I'm John Marx. I'm the Chief Artistic Officer of Form4 Architecture based in San Francisco. We're a 25-person firm. We do kind of a variety of different project types, especially high technology companies like Google and Facebook and Citrix and VMware, but we also do design competitions and work internationally, and just kind of interesting projects here and there. And we also like to write about and do research in architecture. Currently, we're working on a monograph with the Architectural Review, which is advocating for a fundamental change in the way architects design, especially to bring emotional meaning back in as a counterpoint to the alienation of modernism in average architecture. We do a lot of corporate interiors, and with corporate interiors, the tricky part is to, again, reflect the personality, the corporate personality of the company that you're working for. And if you're lucky, they know what that is already, but most of the time they don't. And so you're sort of, even if they built hundreds of thousands of square feet of interiors, they seem to oftentimes look at it fresh each time. So, which can be a good thing, but also you can wander a bit trying to figure out what really appeals to them at that moment. So we try to customize it all to the conditions that we find, and the program, for example. In corporate interiors, though, it's often office space, so you're inventing a narrative that doesn't exist, and then creating materials that back up that narrative. I tend to blank out sometimes on the things that get built because I started architecture wanting to actually be a painter. And with a painter, you create this thing, which is a fiction, right? It's an object, but it's actually depicts something else, right? Generally, I mean, Jasper Johns had a whole theory about painting should be the object, but they often depict something else. And the kind of paintings that I do are oftentimes sort of these dreamlike, surrealistic landscapes, and they depict a memory. And so for me, the thing is the great joy of architecture is when you've gotten the design to a certain point before it starts to erode for a variety of different reasons. And actually, oftentimes when it's constructed, it's a big disappointment because a number of compromises are made to the original vision. Things happen randomly or sometimes with intent that are unfortunate. And so I go through a cycle, and then the cycle picks itself back up later on when people have inhabited the building, and then their excitement then fuels my excitement for it. Because in the end, as an architect, the object that you make, the purpose of it is to provide enjoyment and richness for the people that inhabit it. Unless you're going to just build houses for yourself, which would be a very odd career path, is just to be an architect designing houses for yourself that only you live in your artwork. So I derive the most joy from that. But actually, the first thing I built, though, I have to think about that one a little bit longer. I'm a great fan of pluralism, and pluralism would extend to, it depends on your mood. So if you're in need of a Zen moment, that's something that would make you comfortable. But on the other hand, our house is very colorful. It's got a lyrical name, Mondrian's window, and so it's got these bright primary colors on some of the floors, and on other floors we've moderated those colors to be in the homage to Mondrian, but they're colors of the California morning, so it's a very romantic notion that they're softer. So that room wants to not be quite as vibrant, because to be comfortable there and the emotion that the room would produce in you wants to be different. So stylistically it changes on each floor. It's a little bit different. You get to the bottom floor and it's this crazy cacophony of artificial topiary and a skull collection and all kinds of crazy things. And that's my wife's studio on the ground floor. Classical placemaking, in the way that we've kind of researched it in the office, ends up having kind of three parts to it. So there's the physical space itself, the colors, the richness of materials, the design of the forms, whether it offers protection or openness or a combination of those two things. But also it's the activities that occur in those spaces, because nothing's worse than this beautiful piazza that no one uses because there's no function there that gives them a reason to be there. So most often people need that reason. Now sometimes it could be at the end of a long path and there's a bench that's overlooking, you know, a mountain vista, and you look out to the ocean and it's a very beautiful spot, and it might be for contemplation, which means that its activation is just the bench being able to look at the view. But most often if it's a social communal space, you know, you need things. And like Will talked about in the thing is, you know, eating and drinking are the primary things that one does in these things. But oftentimes, which goes more to what I was talking about, was the idea of performance art and art itself filling the spaces and then participating in something other than just drinking and eating. But those are the classic ones. And the third part is the people themselves. But the people themselves, it's not only the physical person, but it's also their cultural background, their history, their rituals, the things that they like to do and not like to do in addition to the activities. So each of those things brings with it more than just the description of context, activities, and people, but it's all the things that come with it as well. I think the thing is that's been interesting lately, that's actually technology has caught up, but I think the super material would aid this, is to be able to make buildings that move and change. And so materiality is very key to that. You need materials that are rigid but flexible enough that they can change shape. And I think that would be a fascinating aspect of what maybe the future of architecture might be. And I design in sort of lyrically expressive shapes to begin with, so the idea of them moving, kind of like Calatrava's museum in Milwaukee, that it opens up. Although when it gets windy, it has to close down right away, though, because it's a little tricky. But the idea of buildings kind of opening up, you know, that the building wakes up in the morning and develops its personality during the day, and you can then also track solar or prevent solar heat gain in more compelling ways than if it was static. You know, that's very nice. So during part of the day, the building kind of closes down, and other parts it's going to open up. Yeah, so I think that's very exciting.